Dobar dan. That means good day. TalkCast PDX on the web, talkcastpdx.com. It's Tuesday, April 12th, 2022. Name of the show is the Bogdanich Perspective. I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich. Welcome. Episode 56. I named it Truth Or and then a bunch of dots. And I was thinking of when I was growing up, the Warner Brothers cartoons were the current cartoons. And there was a Daffy Duck cartoon where he did a show that was kind of a parody of the TV show at the time called Truth or Consequences. And Daffy Duck used to be the host, and he used to come on and go, Truth or ah! And then he'd go, consequences, and they would make sure bad things happen to the people that answer wrong. It was quite funny. Probably censored anymore, because of quote unquote violent content. You wouldn't want children to see things like that, but I'm sure it exists in some library somewhere. Member of TalkCast PDX. I broadcast on their network, lifestyle shows, cooking shows, travel shows, etc., etc. So, in short, I'm censored not by TalkCast PDX. I should mention, but they broadcast over Google, YouTube, which is owned by Google, and that's the source of the forbidden topics, which are becoming elephants in the room, but we have to ignore them. So we're going to go on. Have my researcher, Gordon. And with the news being the way it is, the only thing we're good at in this country and Britain, for that matter, is propaganda. And so we're going all in on the propaganda. But had Gordon, who's my researcher. If you need a researcher, let me know at paul@stockbetor, email paul@stockbetor, BETTOR.com. Put you in touch with Gordon. But we're going to, just show some things. If you go to, these are fun little things. If you can go to graph number 1, please. Not quite here, but it's just a little bit south of here. This is Hyperion. And Hyperion is the world's tallest tree. It is in Redwoods National Park. It's 383 or 381, depending, feet tall. It's between 600 and 800 years old. On the left, you have, you can see the tree. And on the right, you can see a man, 5 foot 12 inch or 5 foot 10 inch man standing at the base of the tree. So that's Hyperion. Interesting, when you get north of Portland into the Olympic National Forest up in Washington, that's the trees in the Olympic National Forest up there have the tallest average height in the world. But the tallest tree in the world currently is Hyperion, which is down in Redwoods National Park. If you can take that one down. And speaking of tall and skinny, if you can put up graph number 2, please. This, graph number 2, there we go. This is New York. This is the Steinway Tower. It's at 111 West 57th, obviously on Central Park, and it got completed this last week. They differentiate skyscrapers into tall and super tall. Super tall is over 984 feet. Why they came up with that number, I don't know. But this one here, the Steinway Tower, is the thinnest super tall skyscraper in the world, recently completed. 84 floors, has 60 apartments and 84 floors. A studio is $8 million. And a penthouse is near $65 million, or that's the ask on them. This building has an aspect ratio, which is the height to diameter, of 24-1. That's quite ridiculous. It's only 60 feet wide at the base. We're looking at the length, here, but if you turn it on the other side, it's very, very thin. It's only 60 feet. And in the past couple of shows, we did some of the other structures in the world. We had a museum and we had a bridge, and both of those construction projects, a bridge, the biggest suspension bridge in the world, and the museum, were public use. But this is what passes for a grand building in Western society currently. It's what's known as industrial materialism as a genre. It has to have some kind of functional purpose. I'm not sure that building is going to be there in 30 years. It depends on which way the wind blows. They say they built it with super strong materials and this and that, but I kind of don't believe it. And we'll see. But anyway, that's a recent construction project in the West. Not as grand as a museum or a bridge, but that's something. We'll see if it holds up. If you can take down number 2 and go to number 3, this is kind of fun, I think. Anyway, this is a Roman city, or the ruins of a Roman city, Ossetia Antica. It was founded in 400 BC, and it was finally abandoned in 900 AD. And the reason that it was abandoned was because of repeated invasions and sacking by pirates, principally Arab pirates. But what's interesting is this was Rome's first colony. Rome was founded in 700 BC. This colony was founded in 400 BC. But you can see the ruins there. That used to be on the seashore 2,500 years ago. And you can see, because of what they call silting, it's now about 2.5 miles inland. And I found that very interesting over only 2,500 years. They have drawings and plots, and the main waterway used to run down what would be the right side of the picture, and all those settlements up at the top were beachfront back in the day. But 2,500 years later, it's almost it's 3 kilometers, 2.5 miles inland. Very interesting. If you can take that one down, and saw that. I did a show a long time ago about presidents and emperors, Roman emperors. And back in Rome, they had a problem with imperial succession after 0 AD. But every once in a while, you get a child, 18, 20 years old, that was in line to be emperor. And what would happen, I used to call them courtier emperors, Nero, Domitian, Commodus, people like that were courtier emperors, and they're too young for the job, but they have the claim. During their early years, the system is run by the bureaucracy, and in Nero's case, his mother, Agrippina the Younger, and in Domitian's case, his mother, I don't remember her name, but and the bureaucracy. And that's what we have now. Biden's a courtier emperor. He's got no chops of his own, and the system is being run by the bureaucracies and other powerful interests. And we're having some difficulties. NBC News, of all people. NBC News now. And this was news last week, but after Tuesday, so I haven't talked about it. NBC News reports that the Biden administration has been rapidly pushing out, quote-unquote, intelligence about Russia and Ukraine that is low confidence, or based on analysis without evidence, or just plain false. The report says that deliberately circulated false claims forwarded by the U.S. government, read that Central Intelligence Agency, included impending chemical weapons attacks, Russian plans to orchestrate false flag attacks, Putin's advisors misinforming him about Ukraine, and about Russians seeking arms supplies from China. And those all made the news. Maybe you heard them, maybe you didn't, but they were all concocted stories. And when you have a government run by the bureaucracy, that's the kind of thing that you run into, and there's a lot of it. I in today's paper, it's interesting. They've dropped the well, they've switched the Ukraine narrative. We need more aid. We need, Russia. We need you to fight the Third World War with the Russians, is what today's thing says. They have some picture on page 4 or something of some lady, and this is today's paper, and I feel bad for her. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if you can see this, but if you get the Wall Street Journal, it is on page A6. And it's a woman who's identifying her dead husband. But if you look carefully and know what you're looking at, her dead husband is covered with tattoos in bands, one around his chest, one around each arm. And he's the tattoo around the right arm has a swastika in it. The tattoo around the left arm has his rank. And then the tattoo around the center of the chest has his neo-Nazi battalion affiliation. And not mentioned, but, the other reason that they're playing down the Ukraine war is the Russians have succeeded in taking Mariupol. They backed a bunch of the defenders into a corner, about 1,200 of them. About 750 or 1,000 men tried to break out of the Russian defenses, utterly destroyed by large caliber weapons, artillery, and other things. Killed them all. And the remaining 250 or 300, which were members of this elite paratroop division, surrendered. And the first thing they did is, they have them take their clothes off so they can see, what their tattoos are. And so in light of that happening on the ground, we don't mention anything of that nature. We switch the narrative to things that we want to talk about. But anyway, they're securing southern Russia. The rhetoric out of the Soviet side has changed. Putin no longer talks about diplomacy or stuff like this. Somebody ground him on Baraka or something, that city Bucha, where they killed, and he switched his rhetoric. He said, well, he talked about what we did in Raqqa, Syria. We bombed the city, killed 30% of the residents, and let them rot in the sun. They weren't buried for months, didn't even clean it up, destroyed the entire city. So he just, when asked, he just says that it's like what we did in Syria, and that's a change of tone. He used to be more diplomatic. If you could put up graph number 4. He fired the existing field commanders in Ukraine, and he appointed this guy as the commander of military operations in Ukraine. This is General Alexander Dormikov, and he is now in charge of Ukraine. I don't have his full psychological workup, that they keep at the Defense Department. I only know what he's published and things about him. You can take that down. But he's what's called an officer of the line. The prior people that were running the Ukraine operations were intelligence officers from what they call the G2 section, high-ranking generals, that kind of thing, that do more administrative tasks. This guy is a commander of forces, he's a commander of the line, a line officer. He was in charge of their operations in Syria after he was appointed, but before it, which was announced. It was announced about 2-3 days ago. The first article about it is also in today's Wall Street Journal. First article I've seen. I saw a clip just on the internet of artillery firing, but prior to all the other clips that I had seen before that, the prior clips were firing at designated targets. We have a tank that we want you to destroy, so they fire 1 or 2 shells. And the clip I saw the other day was a full battery, which is 12 artillery pieces. You put them in kind of a semicircle, and then they fire this one, that one, that one, this one, like that. And they fire on the order of about 12 shells a minute, and they're firing what's called a convergent sheaf. which is a artillery pattern that starts at the edges and works towards the center and cuts anything in the zone into hamburger, basically. So this guy's quite serious. And the political leadership has changed its tune, so we'll see what they do over there. He's already being blamed for that train station attack that killed like 50 people. Cynics point out that the missile that hit the train station had a serial number of ILL 91579, and that ILL 91576 and IL 91575 were both fired by Ukrainian forces in 2015 into the Donbass region. In other words, that it was probably a Ukrainian missile. They point to the fact that none of the windows in the train station were blown out, and just all of a sudden all these bodies appeared in front. But, you're never going to know. Who knows? Could have been this, could have been that. The point is that the Russian leadership is taking the position that it's regrettable. We'll try and minimize it, but that's the way it goes. To the sanctions, we talked last week about how the Japanese on all the important stuff, joint ventures with oil and joint ventures with gas, and they had the economic and finance minister and the president say that they weren't going to curtail any of that. This week, their interior minister came out and said, Russian troops have killed civilians and attacked nuclear facilities, violating humanitarian law. These crimes can never be forgiven, and in response, we will ban imports of Russian coal and vodka. The Japanese don't burn any coal. They're all nuclear or gas-fed power plants. And they don't drink vodka. They drink either sake or soju, depending. There might be a few bottles here and there, but nobody in Japan drinks a lot of vodka. This caused a cynic to describe the Japanese 5 stages of grief. The first stage is denial. Second stage is anger. Third stage is bargaining. Fourth stage is depression. And then the fifth stage is paying in rubles. So they were talking about the CPI. Jen Psaki, I guess. I keep mispronouncing her name. I like to call her Pataski, but it's not. It's like Jen Psaki or something like that. The President Biden's press secretary, said yesterday that expected March CPI headline inflation is to be extraordinarily elevated due to, quote, the Putin price hike. Now, no matter what else you hear, remember, we're experts at propaganda. It's the only thing we do well. There it is, Putin price hike. Look for it in all your articles, in all your, they're going to call it anything that has to do with rising prices isn't inflation anymore. It's now the Putin price hike. Anyway, the inflation report came out this morning. I scanned it briefly. The headline number showed annual inflation of, 1.2%. So 1.2% times 12 is 13.2%. For the year, but in the report for the month, food was up about 1%. Energy was up 1%. This is for a month. Tobacco and alcohol were up, 0.75%. Shelter was up 0.6%. Medical care was up 0.6%. Salt and seasoning, we're up 5% in 1 month. Fruits and dry vegetables were up 6% in 1 month. Butter and cooking oils were up 6% in 1 month. And that's what they're calling, quote unquote, the Putin price hike. But whenever you hear about inflation, it's now the Putin price hike. The London-based Center for Economics and Business Research said that energy is going to cost 73 in Europe, 73% more, 30% for gasoline, 36% for diesel fuel, and then the other increase for natural gas and other electrical products, and that food inflation would be about 12% a year. Somebody asked one of my, this is unconfirmed, of course, but somebody asked a senior State Department official who had the role undersecretary for Eastern Europe under the Obama administration, did the coup in Ukraine in 2014, was promoted under Biden. But somebody asked her, what will the Europeans do when they figure out that the sanctions are designed to destroy their economies and not Russia's? And she reportedly replied, hopefully most of them will have frozen or starved to death by then. And as crude as that sounds, and as subterranean as that sounds, and as evil as that sounds, that's, she's had other things caught on tape that were similar. So who knows whether she said it or not. Elon Musk bought a 9.2% stake in Twitter. He always, when he does something like that, polls his listeners. Should I sell 10% of my Tesla stock? Like he's going to listen. But to get people involved this time, he ran a couple of polls. Should Twitter's San Francisco headquarters be converted into a homeless shelter? Nobody ever shows up there anyways. In Twitter, should they drop the W? Rename it. If we rebrand it, should we just drop the W from Twitter? Call it Titter. Problems everywhere from the sanctions. Small things in Latvia. There's a 40,000-ton ammonia storage facility that was Russian property. Because of the sanctions, the Russians can't pay. The bank won't clear the transfer for the electricity unless there's some kind of political intervention. If they turn off the electricity on an ammonia storage plant, the ammonia heats and it'll explode and poison the city, basically with chlorine gas. But, so you have all kinds of little problems like that running around. Visa announced that its revenue is going to be down approximately, we'll see how bad it is, 5% from some of the effect of the sanctions. In India, Tamil Nadu, India, couple got married, and for wedding gifts, they asked for gasoline, or in their language, petrol. So people were bringing them, 5-gallon containers of gasoline, 1-gallon containers. Some people brought little liter bottles like this, as wedding gifts to this wedding in India. So they were asking for gasoline. A rabid fox got loose on Capitol Hill, bit 9 people, including a congressman and a network journalist. They caught it and trapped it, and it was, in fact, rabid. There's a job opening. Interesting. The Antarctic Heritage Trust is accepting applications for positions at Port Lacroix, Antarctica. Duties include running the post office and monitoring penguins. The job goes from November of 2022 to March of 2023. The living conditions are a little austere. Limited power, only about 8 hours a day, no running water, no sunlight, and no internet access. Interested applicants applications must be received by 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time on April 25th. So that's the Antarctic Heritage Trust if you're looking to get away from it all and get paid to do it. A company called Plus One Research found that on average, people who listen to podcasts score higher in intellectual curiosity, they have a preference for novelty, and they have lower scores for neurotic behavior and have a lower predisposition to psychological stress. So if you're listening to me today for our vanity, we can assume that you have intellectual curiosity, a preference for novelty, and don't get stressed so easily. And lastly, the Vatican was holding a council or a conference on health and the soul. They invited, these are their attendees, their speakers, Chelsea Clinton, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Deepak Chopra, and the CEOs of both Pfizer and Moderna to speak at this conference in May. When somebody asked them to comment on the guest list, they remarked that Satan was unavailable. So anyway, I don't know if that's apocryphal or not. Probably is. And with that, let's just move to the markets really quick. Justin, if you could please put up graph number 5. There you go. We had stock prices falling a little bit last week. Market closed at 4,413 points as of yesterday. Sorry, I have to take that. They told me it would be after 11. I'll get it in a minute. But anyway, for last week, it was down 1.27%. I keep saying with the economic problems and as they filter through, the only thing we're good at is propaganda. They're going to keep lying to you and lying to you and lying to you and lying to you until they can't lie to you anymore. And I would not be, I would be very, very, I would, I kept saying since January, I would sell them. Hold cash. I don't trust it. But anyway, for the week last week, it was down 1.27%. Our top, which is $1,270. If you owned a $100,000 portfolio, you would have lost $1,270. Our three portfolios here, the top 30 equal weight lost $1,660 instead of $1,270. The top three every sector, top three every sector lost $1,660 instead of $1,270. The top 30 cap weight, which is where you invest more in the largest company, lost $3,920 instead of the $1,270. And the top three every sector, which is if you have a broader portfolio, more diversified, gained $225. So large caps diversified seems to be the order of the day. In the 54 stocks, what do we have? 30 up, 24 down. 4 stocks went up more than 5%. United Healthcare, Pfizer, the elephant in the room, Procter & Gamble, and Target went up 10.8%. And Procter & Gamble, so your consumer staples. Their sales, the price hikes versus the sales, the math turned out favorably. 11 companies that went up more than 3%, but less than 5%. The real estate concerns, ExxonMobil, Costco, Walmart, Abbott Laboratories, Chevron, Philip Morris, Sherwin-Williams, Southern Company, which is the railroads, and Home Depot. So more your consumer, discretionary consumer staples. 6 companies went up more than 2, but less than 3. Thermo Fisher, Verizon, ConocoPhillips, Duke Energy, Johnson Johnson, and Lowe's. 9 companies went up, but less than 2%. And you had your real estate concerns, Kinder Morgan, Gas Pipeline Company, NextEra Energy, Solar Company, Berkshire Hathaway, a bank, and 3M Company. So good strength in discretionary consumer staples. 4 stocks went down, but less than 2%. Comcast, Facebook, JP Morgan. 6 stocks went down more than 2%, but less than 3%. That would be Apple, Cisco, Adobe, Verizon, and Honeywell. 7 stocks went down more than 3%, but less than 5%, and that would be Bank of America, MasterCard, Disney, Nike, PayPal, Netflix, and Google. And that's most of the market there. 7 stocks went down more than 5%. Tesla went down 5.5%. Amazon went down 5.6%. Broadcom went down 6.4%. UPS went down 7.6%. Bank of America went down 8.2%. Microsoft did an acquisition. I can't remember the name of the company, but the investors didn't like the acquisition. It fell 12.8%, and NVIDIA fell 13.5%. In my estimation, because the fog is listing and people is seeing that it's tremendously overvalued. My estimation. Again, propaganda, and they're going to lie to you until they can't lie anymore. So if I see anything material, I'll let you know. The only thing material that I saw was the change in the Russian command that's verifiable. And that's it. Bogdanich Perspective, Tuesday, April 12th. My researcher, Gordon, if you want to get a hold of Gordon to do some research, email me, Paul@stockbettor, BETTOR.com. And Thanks for joining, and do widzenia, which means goodbye, and hopefully see you next Thursday.